Welcome, I would say. Welcome to our webinar on Discover Non-Fungible Tokens and Intellectual Property Rights today, and because it's the World IP Day. So my name is Heike Bratsch, and I'm working as advisor in the GIZ project, Culture and Creative Industries. And we are implementing this project on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, together with the Goethe Institute. And the overall aim of our project is to improve employment and income opportunities for creative professionals in Sub-Saharan Africa and in the Middle East. But today, for this event, we team up with the Hanseatic Blockchain Institute from Germany and with the World Bank's project on Solution for Youth Employment to discuss this specific topic on IP rights and NFT. So, and did you know that almost 50 million people work in culture and creative industries worldwide, and that the digital and creative industry has been, of course, especially prominent in the last years in the growth of this sector? That's why today, on World IP Day, we want to dive into the field of Web3. And together with our speakers, we will have a closer look also on gender, cherishing this year's theme, Women and IP, accelerating innovation and creativity. As research has shown, there's a significant IP gender gap, which represents really missed opportunities. So I'm happy to hand over now to Moritz Schild from the Hanseatic Blockchain Institute, who will guide us through the discussion today.
Yes, thank you very much, Heike. Great pleasure being here. And sorry, my name shows up as meeting room because I'm in the meeting room because I had difficulty. Well, welcome from Hamburg. It's a sunny day here and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Heike mentioned I'm working for Hanseatic Blockchain Institute. Just a brief introduction so you know who I am. I have an academic background in law and business administration. I work in financial services for about 25 years and had the privilege of getting in touch with someone telling me about blockchain and Bitcoin back in 2013. And I have to admit that since then, I'm keen to learn, to educate, to talk, to discuss everything about crypto, blockchain, and Web3. With that, I am one of the co-founders of an association domiciled here in Hamburg called Hanseatic Blockchain Institute. We want to support the cooperation within this space, and we want to educate, and we do that since 2017. We have regular meetings, we organize workshops. We have been approached by GIZ, which is really great and wonderful. And one final thing, our Hanseatic Blockchain Institute, domiciled in Hamburg, recently got approached by the German Federal Ministry of Business Development and Climate Change. And we won a study that we are going to perform over the next couple of months, which will look into the application cases for blockchain not in the world, but in Germany. A study called W3 Now, which we are going to start now, and if someone is from Germany, is interested in learning about this study, please feel free to visit our website at w3now.de. With that introduction, I have to admit that we came together as a panel with relatively short notice, and I'm grateful particularly to Oliver Scherenberg who helped to put together this panel, which is kind of a global, worldwide collaboration of IP experts. And I would like to take the opportunity to briefly introduce each of them to you, and in order from left to right. We will go into more details about everybody. However, please give us a short introduction. I would like to start with you, Fernanda. Fernanda is joining us from Mexico, and she is our artist. She's not a lawyer, and we will use we will use her somehow as our role model and example to discuss the IP aspects later on. Fernanda, please tell everybody who you are and what people should know about you and what you are particularly keen about Web3.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here. I'm Fernanda Boccard. I'm from Argentina. I'm living in Mexico City, and I moved from Argentina to Mexico 5 years ago, looking for new opportunities. And 2 years ago, I learned about NFTs. I used to work in the film industry in the art area. When I was living in Argentina, I moved for that reason, but then I discovered NFT 2 years ago, and I decided to do something with my art. I never monetized my artwork before because I used to work in other industry. But when I discovered NFT, I saw a great opportunity to finally do something with my artwork because I used to paint for myself and for my friends and family. And I decided to make a collection. That was 2 years ago. And 1 year ago, I launched Serious and Cool People, and I sold out within a month, which is for me was a huge surprise. And everyone were talking about my characters on LinkedIn because I sold my collection and I did my whole strategy on LinkedIn. I met wonderful people on LinkedIn. I met all of you there. So since then, I'm now into NFTs full time. I consider myself as a Web3 creative and artist. I'm working on my second collection, but yes, what put me in the Web3 focus was my first collection, Serious and Cool People, which is sold out right now. And yeah, this is me. Right now, I'm working full time on my artwork. I'm not working in movies anymore. I never worked in movies in Mexico. Now I'm working full time into NFTs. And I think it's a huge world. I'm still learning, but I learned a lot since then. And yeah, this is very excited, and I'm very excited to be here. So yes, please use me as an example because I'm an artist. I'm not that into IP, but of course I know a little bit.
Great, thank you very much, Fernanda. Next on our list is Joanne Holmes. She is an IP lawyer and is located in Atlanta, if I remember correctly, in the US. Give us a brief introduction so everybody knows who you are and what you are particularly doing with Web3.
Excellent. Thank you, Moritz. So as you shared, my name is Joanne Holmes, and I am with Holmes at Law. I am a global intellectual property and digital assets attorney and a Web3 advisor. I help business leaders globally design compliant and profitable Web3 revenue ecosystems. I'm very fortunate to have advised some extraordinary and elite accelerators, including Dapper Labs, Techstars, and here the Atlanta Blockchain Center. And effectively what I'm doing is advising founders on 5 continents. So I have a great opportunity to see how blockchain technology is being deployed across the world. I serve here on the inaugural Blockchain Law for Social Good Center, where our objective is to help law students, lawyers, and legislatures design blockchain technology policy that helps the industry flourish while also protecting the citizenry in the United States. And I am very fortunate to have been identified as one of the top 100 women of the future. And so on today, when we are celebrating women in intellectual property, that is certainly something that is dear to my heart. I believe that Web3 creates opportunities for more egalitarian intellectual property-based wealth. So it is an honor and a privilege to be with everyone here and speak about how we can help support women in this new emerging technology around blockchain. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's great having you in our panel. The next one on my list is Oliver Scherenberg, who is as well in Hamburg, Germany, so kind of next door. Oliver, please give a short introduction to what you do and what's your passion about Web3.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mart. Thank you, Heike, for having us, for allowing us to be on this panel today about the topic intellectual property and NFTs, which is dear to my heart, and my full day schedule is almost dominated by these two topics. So I am an intellectual property attorney with almost 20 years of experience in licensing, monetizing intangible assets. So it has been in the media industry some time, it has been in technology areas, more in the trademark, more in the advertising, but let's say the underlying principle has always been to connect people who made innovations or creative processes and connect them with users and let's say the industry. So ultimately to create a revenue stream from intellectual property and to monetize these assets. So it has come as something natural that when Web3 became a bigger thing, especially when NFT projects became more and more popular, that I also wanted to be prepared to respond to client requests. As I started getting the first requests, I understood that I did not understand very much. So I thought it was very wise to dig into things much more, not only from the legal perspective, but also from the technical perspective. So the last 2 years, maybe I have spent in educating myself, having sessions with developers, with coders, with agencies, advertisers, brand strategists, and certainly also with a lot of international lawyers and tax advisors. So that is also one of the reasons why I thought it might be useful for other attorneys and other clients and other users to get connected to people around the world for other legal disciplines. And that has been the motivation for me to create a platform that is called Web3 Lex. And this platform, Web3 Lex, is combining the knowledge of different jurisdictions for attorneys from around the world for Web3 legal matters. And we're also trying to create immersive experiences so it is really accessible for everyone around the world, no matter where you are, what gender, religion, or other jurisdiction you come from, to get an easy and quick access to qualified legal advice. And that is what we're here for. And we're getting a lot of representation of these contributors to the platform because a couple of them are in our esteemed panel also today. So thank you for having me again. I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Great, Oliver, thank you. Next one is Ifeanyi. Ifeanyi is an IP lawyer located in Nigeria, but working out of South Africa as well. Ifeanyi, if you can just give us a brief introduction to you.
Thank you, Moritz. So I'm Ifeanyi Emmanuel Okonkwo. I am an IP expert and deputy head of the technology, media, and entertainment sector at Jackson Edu. Jackson Edu is a law firm with wide reach in Africa. So I authored one of the earliest pieces published by Oxford on NFTs. It's titled NFTs, IP, and Commercialization. And I'm involved in the making of most of the IP laws in Nigeria, as well as the recent discussions around Web3. I'm passionate in helping the development of businesses and protection of their IP rights across Africa, including, of course, businesses owned by women.
Perfect, thank you. Last but not least is Ekta. Ekta is an IP lawyer with admission in Delhi, India, but currently talking to us out of Hamburg, so the time difference is not that big. Ekta, please give a short introduction as well.
Thanks a lot, Moritz. Hi, everyone. It is great to be here with all of you virtually today. My name is Ekta, and I'm an IP lawyer from India. I practiced law in Delhi for over 2 years before moving to Germany in 2020 for my master's degree. And here as a student researcher for an IP professor in 2020, so in my first semester, I was asked to do research on IP as a use case for the blockchain technology, which of course is a different topic. But as I went down the rabbit hole, should I explain the term rabbit hole? Okay. Yeah, as I went down the rabbit hole, dig deeper into the blockchain, I discovered NFTs and was so fascinated by how they are revolutionizing the art industry, especially enabling independent artists to monetize their digital creations and exercise control over their work. Yeah, and this led me to write my master's thesis on ownership and IP rights issues in NFTs. Under German law. So yes, I'm an Indian lawyer researching German law and also working on building an open source Web3 legal knowledge base for the Web3 community at Web3 Lex, which Oliver had just talked about. So despite being away from India in Hamburg, I remain in close contact with Web3 startups and NFT artists in India. And today I look forward to sharing my insights on NFTs and IP rights with all of you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being with us. So, Heike asked me before we dig into the IP theme to give a short introduction to ensure that everybody is kind of on the same level playing field. And when I asked her, so what exactly do you think about? She said, yeah, well, maybe you just briefly explain what blockchain and NFTs is about, but don't take more than 5 minutes. And I told her that's impossible. Nonetheless, we will try to give those of you who have heard a little bit about blockchain to give at least some broad framework. And I would like to, there are many approaches, many people do it from a very technical background, others explain it by comparing sending letters with sending emails and so on. I would like to just take you with me on a very short journey through the evolution of blockchain until today, where we see this NFT development. Tom is the one who's sharing the screen. This is my first slide. Let us start, because everything what we are talking today about today is NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and all these tokens are related to something that is called blockchain. Blockchain is the underlying technology, and blockchain is something that was essentially developed or published, first of all, back in 2008 by a person that's said to be called Satoshi Nakamoto. He essentially published a paper at a time when there was a financial crisis. Everybody was scared about money, and he said, I have the idea to develop a digital protocol which permits that individuals take part in this protocol and they can send to each other something valuable. Prior to that, you could send emails and so on. You could send copies. And the underlying idea of blockchain was to develop a peer-to-peer system where trust can be transferred. And on this platform, the kind of first well-known piece of that was transferred is the Bitcoin. Many of you may have heard about, which is some digital version of money, to put very, very brief. That was the first step, and then more and more the idea of blockchain, e.g. of using a digital platform that's peer-to-peer, where everybody can take part without any intermediaries, and where data is stored in a format that's impossible to delete the data, where the data is not stored on one single computer, but on a community of computers. And even if you switch off one of them, the rest of the computers will remain the blockchain and will keep the data, which is different from the traditional systems where someone holds the data, and if he or she switches off his computer, then the data is gone. And then we had the development that people more and more realized that this blockchain is not only usable for digital money, but as well for many other applications, particularly so-called smart contracts that would automatically perform certain transactions irrespective of human interference, and particularly irrespective of an individual computer being online or offline. And then the idea of tokenization came up. People started saying, I have something, might be even a physical, for example, piece of art, and I would like to put it on the blockchain, e.g. to create a reference to my piece of art, which somehow is digitalized, so everybody can allocate it to an individual owner. And that was an entirely new concept, because to date, if you have a digital copy of, for example, a picture, then this is something everybody can share via WhatsApp, via email or whatsoever, and nobody knows who is the owner. The idea of applying blockchain to virtual digital art created the opportunity to transfer something like ownership of a piece of art, for example, from one person to another, without an intermediary, without a gallery or whatever where someone want to buy it, but with a digital register that clearly says this piece of art belongs to Joanne and the other one belongs to Hector. And this idea of using blockchain as a platform where you can allocate digital documents, art, to individual wallets has created an enormous market that in 2021 reached a volume of 25 billion US dollars in sales in these NFTs, in pictures that are individual and that can be digitally transferred, allocated, and sold. And I think on the next slide, we have just given a brief understanding, and I'm delighted that this picture is already one of the collection of Fernanda talked about, and we will get into that in a minute. So an NFT is called non-fungible token. It's a unique identifiable information which is directly linked to a file, and the file contains the art piece. However, by using this connection, I can transfer it to someone else, and after that, everybody who is eligible to look into this database will be able to say, okay, this has been transferred from Moritz to Oliver, for example. However, having such a digital art piece in your wallet does not enable access to the underlying piece of art. It does not necessarily prevent copies to be taken. However, it's some kind of an assignment. And I believe that this idea of being able to assign digital art, it is something that prior to this new technology could be easily transferred within seconds by just sending it over to someone. But now being able to tag it, to have your stamp on it, and to be able to say, come on, I have a picture that's very special and I have it in my wallet, on my phone, and there is a clear identification. It belongs to me, it's mine, I bought it. That's an enormous step that makes digital art marketable. And I think we have one final slide that gives you a flavor of how this would work. And here we have a screenshot again, one piece of out of the collection of Fernanda, where a marketplace called OpenSea, which is supposed to be the largest marketplace for NFTs, is offered currently at a price of 0.22 Ethereum. Ethereum is the currency most often used on these markets, and this number translates to a purchase price of $400 US for a digital picture. With that, I do hope that all of you that said I've never heard about NFTs at least got a slightly higher level of understanding. And with that, I would like you, Tom, to switch off the PowerPoint and would like to start our discussion exactly with you, Fernanda. You introduced yourself already. However, give us a flavor. How did you get to the idea? What was your first encounter with NFTs, and what made you, which started painting for your kind of private amusement, to say, let's start if I can convert one of my pieces into an NFT? And then what was the input, and what was your idea about it?
Yes, it was because I saw a great opportunity to monetize my artwork, because I always paint and I knew that I wanted to do something someday, maybe mix a film with my artwork or something like that. I didn't know what to do. But when I discovered NFTs, I saw a huge opportunity to finally monetize and just show my artwork to the world. And when I started studying about NFTs, I got obsessed, absolutely obsessed about the technology, the idea, and how can I sell my artwork through cryptocurrency. So I decided to create a collection from scratch, even though I already have another illustration that maybe I could uh, offer in a marketplace. I decided to do something from scratch, something new. That's why I create Serious and Cool People. And
Sorry to interrupt you,
yes.
but how and when did that start? Was it a friend saying, "Hey, have you seen the NFTs?" Or what was your first encounter with the idea?
Because I met a friend from Miami and he saw my paintings. I didn't have an iPad at that time. Now I have an iPad Pro, so I paint with my pencil on the iPad. But at that time, I didn't have anything to paint with, and I used to paint in a paper. So I saw him all my papers with my artwork, and he told me about NFTs. That was maybe 2 years ago on June 2021, and he just tell me that, like, do your own research, maybe you should do NFTs. I think it's a great opportunity for you. And I started watching YouTube videos, and then he invited me to his birthday in Miami, and he told me, look, I'm going to invite you to my birthday. I think it's a great opportunity for you because some of my friends are into NFTs, some of them are into Web3, they want to create a marketplace. So the invitation is for you. If you want to come, just come over. Of course, I went because I saw another opportunity going there, and I met a group of people. They were building a marketplace, and 2 months later, I went to Las Vegas. I met them personally, and they helped me to get into NFTs, and they mint my NFTs in their marketplace. That was my first mistake because I didn't own my own keys.
Okay,
So
but
for
the technical process, which for those of you not familiar, is not easy peasy, at least.
No.
If you are an artist, you started using external supporters who gave you the technology to mint. Minting is the creation of an NFT out of a piece of art. And then the next step was just using this marketplace you have been introduced to and say, okay, I put them on this marketplace and let's see if someone is interested in buying them.
Yes, I already have maybe 20 of my friends that wanted to buy my NFTs because they saw me working so hard for 5 months. So they wanted to support me, and they were buying my NFTs on that marketplace. But of course, they were taking the 30% of the sales. And I was thinking, why they are going to take the 30% of my sales if I sold the NFT because they are my friends? And actually, I didn't own the keys because they meant for me. And I was like, I think that's not a good deal. But finally and luckily, I realized about that. So I decided to burn those NFTs and minting on OpenSea. And I did my own, marketing strategy. And yes, and I sold that within a month. But of course, the first time when I learned about NFTs, it was so hard for me. I had no idea about cryptocurrency. I had no idea about anything. So it took me like 2 months and a half to really understand what NFT is about and how can I take that technology in my, how can I say that? How can I take an advantage of that technology and sell my artwork using a cryptocurrency? But yeah, it was hard at the beginning. It took me like 2 months, like sitting 24/7 in the chair, looking for YouTube videos. And of course, my English at that time, it wasn't that good. Now I'm improving my English, but all the information were in English. So yeah, it was hard for me. I think if you want to get into NFT and you're an artist and you have no idea about anything, you need to take your time, be patient, because it's going to be hard at the beginning. Then it's going to be more easy. But at the beginning, it's going to be hard to really understand what NFT is about because you need to learn a lot about not only marketplaces, about cryptocurrency, which blockchain is better for you, one-of-one art pieces, PFP. My collection, for example, is one-of-one and PFP at the same time. I didn't know at that time. Now I know.
Maybe you just explain what PFP stands for, because not everybody might be familiar with the. And please, everybody, use the chat function if you have questions or remarks, and we will have a open discussion later on. But let's have this as interactive as possible. Yeah, what does PFP stand for?
One of one is when you have only one NFT and you created that NFT without using any algorithm. PFP is when you create, let's say, 5,000, 10,000 collection using an algorithm to create all the character. So PFP is profile picture project. So that means that you can use your NFT as a profile picture on Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. But what I did one of one, but PFP at the same time, because my collection can be used as a PFP, as a profile picture on social media. But I did 111 PFP character, one of one. So I did one of one. I did 111. That's why it took me like 5 months. No one does that. I don't know if someone did it, but I think it was the best option for me because that was the tool that I had at that time. I know that I want to create a collection because I understood the collection meaning at that time, because everyone were doing collection, not only one of one NFT. I think that was more important at that time. Now I think the people prefer to buy one of one art pieces. I think it's more, we are going more into that way. But at that time, everyone were selling PFP collection, but I had no idea how to do it. I didn't know how to use an algorithm. So I create PFP, but making each character handmade.
Before we move into the IP aspect, which should be on World IP Day, of course, the main part of our discussion today. So when you started selling your NFTs, was it with the intention that people would use them as profile pictures, or would you expect that people print it out and put it in the kitchen, or is that did you have any idea of what the purchasers would want to do with the NFT they bought from you?
Not really. I mean, but for me, it was an honor to see all of them using their Serious and Cool as a PFP. For me, it was like, oh my goodness, I nailed it. But but yeah, I mean, what I wanted is the people support me and buy my art because they like it, not because they want to take profit. But I had only one guy who bought 13 NFT the first time when I minted, only with the intention to take profit from it, and they did it. Yeah, he did it. He did it well. I think he resell like a 10 NFTs of the 12 or 13 that he bought. So I had only one people on that kind, but the rest of my holders, they bought it because they like it and they wanted to support me. So for me, that's pretty good, because you want, as an artist, you want people who want to support your artwork, not with the intention to take profit from it, because they like it and they want to hold it.
One more question. One of the smart aspects of selling art digitally is that you can follow your babies, so to say, so you know if they are transferred to someone else and so on. Is that something, first of all, you care about? And secondly, can you see how intensively your collection has been traded by the initial buyers to kind of via secondary markets to other interested party? Is that something that makes you happy, or are you not happy because people are just using it to make money and premium on it?
Yeah, it makes me happy if that intention of that person, if they can fulfill the purpose of their goal, I'm happy with that. I'm not happy if maybe 90% are trading my NFTs, because come on, I want you to hold it. But only 3% of them are listed. So for me, that's a really good number. And I'm happy for that people, because that was his first goal, to trade it and resell it. And he made money. He made a good amount of money. And I think that was his goal. So I'm happy for him. And of course, I took the 10% of those sales. So it wasn't that bad, to be honest. But at my floor price, I'm not sure, but I think it's 0.2 right now, or 0.23, something like that. But most of the people who bought my NFTs, they bought it and they're holding the NFTs. So most of them bought only one NFTs, and some of them bought 2 or 3 because they believe in me. And some of them, they told me, oh, this collection had the potential, like a Bored Ape Yacht Club or things like that. I was like, okay, that's too much pressure for me. But I'm very happy because they did it because they like it. And for me, that's great.
Final question, because to you in the first kind of round, because Heike mentioned particularly that today it's not only the World IP Day, but as well the World Women IP Day for you as a woman. And IP is something that should protect people. Do you feel that you need protection as a female artist? Is this a space where there is a certain gender allocation already you can see, or is it equal gender area?
To be 100% honest, it's totally equal for me. I never felt that because I'm a woman, I don't have the same opportunities. I feel it in that way. Of course, I know in Web3 and NFTs, we need more women because maybe 90% of the people selling and trading NFTs are male community. But particularly, I don't feel that I can't do something because I'm a woman. For example, maybe because my mom raised me like that, and he told me, and he never told me, oh, because you are a woman, you can't do that or this. She always tell me you can do anything you want, and I don't have that feeling. I don't feel that I'm a woman, I can't do something. Maybe my only limitation at the beginning and maybe now is the language. So I'm learning English. Of course, I speak Spanish. Maybe that could be my only limitation, and I know that I can learn. But yes, I don't feel maybe other people, the women who came from another, I don't know, maybe vulnerable places, they can feel it in that way. And of course, we are here to help them. And I'm very happy, more than happy to help them. But I'm not feeling that I don't have that opportunity because I'm a woman.
Good to hear. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's now move a little bit the focus from art to law, and both of these have three characters, and apart from that, not too much in common, because one is very kind of straightforward and formal and rule-based, whereas art is pretty free. Nonetheless, we have certain aspects from which a legal pair of glasses that are interesting, relevant, and important when we look at NFTs. And before we step into the part, what exactly are the IP rights that belong to someone buying an NFT, I would like to start a little bit earlier by just raising the question, to what extent is IP applicable to digital art, to something that's can only be seen on your phone or on a screen, because in most regions, at least, the traditional IP laws have been developed and they regard taking photocopies of something and distributing it somewhere and so on. This is the kind of traditional view. And if I may, Joanne, I think as you are in the US, there has recently a pretty relevant case under American law. However, it might be illustrative for the global view. Is the digital area some kind of free space, or are the rules applicable like in the traditional physical world?
The rules are very much still applicable. I think the issue to consider is how do we apply legacy intellectual property law to new innovation? And we all know that the reality is that the law sometimes moves much more slowly than the intellectual property innovation. And so if we think around a baseline with respect to NFTs, we have fundamentally trademark and copyright law, and in close relation, we have contract law through licensing. Can you hear me again now? Okay, great. We all know that trademarks are the way that we protect brand names, logos, and slogans. So if we think back to something that people might be familiar with globally, if we use Nike as an example, Nike is a brand name, the logo is the famous swoosh, and then the slogan is just do it. Similarly, if we carry that forward into the NFT space, then you have, for example, the famous brand Bored Ape Yacht Club, which recently a court here in the United States has recognized to have trademark significance, even though that brand name was not registered. Similarly, we have the example of Hermes's Birkin bags, which is a globally famous trademark. And recently, again, a court here in the United States has recognized the significance of that trademark where there was an infringement on the brand with a digital asset. So then we move on to copyright, and copyright is the way on a global basis that we protect novel works of authorship. So we might think of songs, we might think of artwork, sculpture, photography, the script of a film. All of those are going to be protected under copyright as, for example, in addition, moving into the innovation space, we have software that's protectable under copyright. And so if we apply that in the Web3 space, the profile pictures, as Fernanda mentioned, or all sorts of digital art are protectable under copyright. So as soon as someone creates a piece of art and they either tap record on or save on their computer, or as soon as they're finished creating that drawing on a physical piece of paper or medium that's physical, then the artist owns the copyright in that work. They can go one step further and go to their local copyright office and obtain a registration for protection. And through international treaties, you're able to get virtually global protection for a copyright, whereas it's necessary from country to country with a few exemptions, like in the European Union or in the African Intellectual Property Organization, where you can get multi-country protection. So if we think back to first principles, you have a trademark, which is the brand for an art collection, and you have copyright, which is the protection for the creative expression of a work, whether it's digital or physical. When someone buys, and that's a little bit of a term that needs to be unpacked, but when someone is a holder of a piece of digital art, then we think through what rights are they actually receiving. And that goes back to what the issuer of the collection granted under a license being effectively a contract that goes from the creator to the collector and says, these are the rights that I'm granting to you. So those are ways that we see legacy intellectual property and contract law applying in the digital art space.
Okay, so if you create an NFT in the first place, better make sure that if Fernanda had used the Coca-Cola logo, for example, as a piece of her art or as the background or something like that, she would have run the risk of making an infringement to Coca-Cola. And that was exactly what happened in the case you mentioned, where Hermes, the well-known French handbag and lots of other luxury goods producer, realized and got the support from the Supreme Court that someone using their bags, a picture of their bags, as a relevant part of an NFT would already be in an infringement situation by only doing that. Nonetheless, we want to talk about examples like Fernanda, who luckily did not use Coca-Cola as a background for NFTs, asking, so what exactly are you giving out? What exactly are people buying? And as you mentioned, I would assume that in the first place, neither the artist nor the buyer is really reflecting on that. And later on, people might find out that they have a different understanding of that. Oliver, if I may hand it over to you by asking, so what, and don't answer with it depends. So what exactly does someone buy when buying an NFT, for example, on OpenSea?
Yes, I think, yes, so it is indeed already difficult to say if they are buying at all, or if it is a transfer or whatever exactly is happening there. So let's just, for the sake of simplicity, say they are indeed purchasing a digital asset. What is happening instead is a bit more complicated, and I will try to pick up what Joanne already mentioned and how to, well, structure, or let's say separate some of these transactions, which are in fact not one transaction, but there are several layers of a transaction. And I think this is really important to understand when you talk about non-fungible tokens, that the NFT is not the picture. The NFT is the entry on the blockchain, which is just scribbled code, if you so want, governed by a smart contract, which is a self-executing software that basically follows an indication that you predetermine. And that is basically software on the blockchain, if you so want. That is the token. That is what is non-fungible. That will lead you to a digital asset. So the smart contract of the token includes an information that will identify one digital asset. In this case, and that is how it typically happens, it identifies a digital asset that is represented on a website. It can be an immutable website, also on a blockchain, but it can also be a digital asset that is stored on a website elsewhere. It is just linked to this token address. And so what the token does, it identifies that this token represents ownership, in this case, for example, of a specific digital asset. But let's not be confused. There is a token, that's layer 1, and there is a digital asset, which is layer 2, if you so want, of a transaction. And now, since we're talking about intellectual property today, it is important to understand that we have still not talked about intellectual property. So we have the token, we have the asset, but what comes next is the third layer, and that is the question, how can you use the digital asset? So does it mean that only because you bought an NFT linking to a digital asset, I can do with it whatever I want? And the answer is no, that's not the case. So you need an agreement, you need a contract with the project owner, with the person who issued the token, and they will say, this token leads to a digital asset, and here is the agreement. I identify this token as being mine, I hold the intellectual property right, and I grant you a license to do something with it. Because if you do not say anything, and that is what happens very often, if you do not say anything about the third layer, there is no license. So the default setting is, and that would be just the same as going into a gallery and buying a physical art piece. The default is you get a digital asset, or you get the physical asset from the gallery. You can take it home and you can hang it up on your wall or look at it at your computer screen, but you cannot do anything with it. So you need.
I mean, that in principle is good, because I remember that Fernanda said when she started selling her collection, she had no clue about it, and she had nothing in mind. And as a result, one would assume that the buyers did only get the right to use it, maybe as a profile pic or put it on their wall.
Yes.
If I may switch over to Ifeanyi, the idea Oliver shared with us, which is in theory, if nothing is in writing, the buyer of an NFT gets nothing apart from being allowed to look at it. Is that something concept-wise that's applicable in Africa as well? Even knowing that Africa is having very, very many different states with different legal systems. And have you had cases that relate to this problem?
Yes, so the principles are basically the same, because majorly the particular law that comes to mind is copyright and trademarks. And there are treaties, international treaties, that bind most member states to those treaties, of which most African countries are part of these treaties. So I think the most interesting thing there is, just like Oliver has mentioned, you are not actually getting the copyright in this. And so the question would then be, what then are you buying, or why are people actually buying NFTs, right? For some persons, it may not just make sense, since it's something that's out there. For instance, look at the Mona Lisa portrait. I mean, it's everywhere on the internet. Why do I have to go and pay for it? And so the idea behind buying NFTs is that the buyer gets some sort of bragging rights to say, oh, I actually have a signed digital copy from the true owner. That is when, of course, it is the true owner that has, created and is selling the NFTs. That is on the one part. And then secondly, you're now saying that perhaps the value also can be seen where the NFT terms, of course, allows you, for instance, to be the first person to hear the new song. Let's say maybe John Legend has come out with a new song and nobody has heard that song before. And then he has minted some of NFTs saying, oh, if you buy this, you get to be among the first persons that will hear the song. Or perhaps you'll be the only person that will ever hear the song. Now, that is where the value comes in, and that is where people then rush and say they are buying. But even when you're buying these NFTs, definitely, it is not the song or the rights in the song that you are buying. It will all then depend on what Oliver was trying to explain as to whether the terms of that platform or the agreement gives that right. Either it's a licensing right for you to use, or in some cases, and this is the disruption that is happening now, there are some organizations, even in Africa, that are now trying to use the NFT as a platform, not just for mere digital assets, but to also incorporate intellectual property assets. And if this goes successfully, what it means is they would probably, what would make these platforms unique or stand out is that they will be saying, for this digital asset, once you purchase it, you also get the right or the licensing right to the real IP asset. And that is the unique thing that is happening now.
Let me jump to you, Hector. I would assume that the underlying concept of IP, e.g., if you buy it from an artist, you only get what is written down somewhere, is similar in India as well. However, and this reflects to a question I've just seen in the chat room, how is the other way around working? So if a seller of an NFT is selling his piece of art, can he still sell further copies? Can he sell a printout of the NFT that was initially sold to the initial buyer? What's your view on that? Who holds the rights, particularly if nothing is in the contract?
Yeah, it works the same way, like what Oliver explained, what you buy from the museum. When you buy an art piece, you don't buy the rights to it, you just buy the art piece and you can decorate your living room with it, perhaps. And in the same way, when you're buying an NFT, or when the creator is selling an NFT, for example, Fernanda sold her NFT, what she sold was this right to the person to have it in the wallet, maybe display it, maybe have it as a profile picture, but this person cannot commercialize it or use it in any other way unless Fernanda says that, okay, I also give you the use rights or exclusive rights or non-exclusive rights, or maybe you can use it only in the USA or in Mexico, or in particular jurisdiction or in a particular way. So it's up to Fernanda to restrict or limit the use or give more rights to this person. So it works in the same way. And in India, the definition of artistic work is quite broad. And even if we assume that NFT can represent almost anything, you can tokenize anything and link it to a token. Any asset can be linked to a token. And if we assume that NFTs are just a database or just a computer program, they will still be protected by the copyright laws in India. So I see no limitation that NFTs cannot be protected by the intellectual property rights in India.
All right. Nonetheless, all this sounds a little bit theoretical, because in real life, selling an NFT and afterwards saying, "Etchy badge, you have nothing," might not be the appropriate way, might not meet the expectations, and then, of course, even enforcing the intellectual property rights, if Fernanda realizes that a guy in Hong Kong is putting her NFTs on a screen outside his shop, for example, how do you get into that? Oliver wanted to say something to it. Is there a market standard already in place, or might come up someone?
Yes, I think it is super important to give a real life example to understand why people cannot expect anything else than the asset. Because indeed, and I answer the second part of your question right after that, because people have expectations that they're getting more than just the asset, but that is a development that came from the market. So I think it is important to understand, for example, if you go into a bookstore, Joanne, we see your cable now, unfortunately, not your face anymore. Okay. So if you go to a bookstore and you buy a book, what you can do is you read the book. What you cannot do is copy the book and resell the book in multiple times. What you can do when you buy music, when you used to buy music on iTunes, for example, you can listen to the music, but you cannot print it on a DVD and resell it, or have a platform where you upload it and people have to pay for the upload. The same, that is absolutely obvious for everyone. So if you buy a Warhol piece of art, you cannot print calendars and coffee mugs and sell them. Everyone is obvious that no one can do that. And answering your question for the second part, but for some reason, people expect that to come with the asset in the NFT space. And the simple reason is that some people who have NFT projects did exactly that. They tried to disrupt this default setting of you buy the art, you get nothing, by saying you get the art and you get the intellectual property right with it, or at least you get excessive use rights with it. So people started to connect non-fungible tokens with, hey, they come with all the rights. And therefore, the default setting, which is still the case, is not in the people's minds. And I think this is something really, really game-changing, that people may want to get the intellectual property right, because typically if you buy a book, you just want the book, you don't want anything else. But now people want the book and they want the right to, well, to develop the story of the book if you transfer that idea, or if they buy the Warhol, they also want to recreate the Warhol, paint it differently and make collections or whatever. So this is expectation driven by some of the early projects. And therefore, we have all this work as IP attorneys to clarify that that's still not the case, even though people may expect it.
I mean, we have seen Fernanda's example, and it's not only about being right in terms of IP laws, it is as well about the economic power of this development. And that's something I personally appreciate very much, that now people, women, artists from developing countries that started just painting on paper have now a means and a possibility to make their artwork, first of all, seen, and secondly, to monetize that. And to get to that purpose, it might be sensitive to attach certain rights when selling your NFTs. John, what would you recommend to a young artist when he's starting, asking you which rights should I include when selling my NFTs?
So speaking from a perspective of a US-based attorney, I generally, unless there's a specific reason to move away from this, generally advise that clients do not grant trademark rights. And the reason why is because you need to have a specific set of products and services that a trademark identifies. We have here in the United States a concept of dilution, which gives additional protection to famous marks. So going back to the Hermes and Birkin bag example, the court recognized that Birkin is a globally famous trademark, and so it was entitled to an additional scope of protection than a mark that is less famous. But if we go back to first principles, you obtain trademark rights in a couple of ways. One is under common law, where effectively you get rights by going out and offering a product or a service under that brand. Or you obtain trademark rights through getting a registration through your national governing authority. And in that scenario, you need to tell that authority, these are the products and services specifically identified by this trademark. So it's not really possible, certainly under United States law, to be able to grant a community of collectors very broad trademark rights where they can go and use your brand for any product or service under the sun, because you as the issuer don't have that broad a scope of rights. So this is the reason why I typically advise clients against granting trademark rights unless they're going to be a very specific license. Moreover, here in the United States, a trademark owner has a responsibility to maintain overview for the quality and the goodwill associated with that brand. So there are some unique responsibilities for trademark holders. From a copyright perspective, what's really interesting and frankly disruptive from an intellectual property law perspective is I think of it as a spectrum. So on the most conservative end of the spectrum, you'd have a brand, for example, like Disney, where in respect of their copyrights, they hold all of the rights very closely. They might allow, for example, some fan art, but outside of that, if a third is using their characters, which are again protected under copyright, without a license, Disney's attorneys are going to go and stop that use. What happened in 2017, 2018 is we had something called CryptoKitties, which were some of the earliest NFTs. And what was disruptive about that is that they said to the holders in that collection, you can commercialize your individual CryptoKitty up to $100,000. And that was just unheard of, really, in traditional intellectual property. We move a little bit further down the spectrum to Yuga Labs and the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And effectively what they said is our holders have an unlimited commercial opportunity to go out and monetize their PFP. And what that meant was they could go do all sorts of creative copyright licenses in terms of holding that. And then the last and most generous end of that spectrum is something called Creative Commons Zero, where effectively the issuer of the collection, we've seen this with Nouns and MFers and Moonbirds as examples of collections, where the issuers of those collections said, we're going to relent our copyright to our holders, and not only our holders, but to anyone. And you can go out and commercialize the rights, the copyright in these works in whatever ways you choose to do that. And that is truly not a model that we've historically typically seen in terms of intellectual property holders being so generous. So what I would advise a client is think through what you want to offer, what level of control. If you want your work, for example, to not be able to use in obscene ways or ways that you see as harmful, really think through what you want to offer and what your model is going to be, so you know whether you're going to be on the more conservative side of an organization like Disney or the most generous side of those collectors who've issued Creative Commons Zero rights.
Yeah, Fernanda raised her hand.
Yes, I want to ask you, John, about COS and Disney, because the artist COS is using Disney body, the Mickey body. So I wanted to ask you if they have an agreement or something like that, or COS is free to use the Mickey body and put in a different head. You know that?
So I'm not familiar with the artist, but I do know that Disney has, particularly I'm aware of their traditional works like Mickey Mouse, as well as their more modern works in the marble body. And my understanding is that they have had a very closed platform and presentation because they want to be very careful about the licenses and the ecosystem. So I would be very surprised if Disney granted licenses that were not very carefully crafted around the scope of use of their traditional copyrighted works.
Let's move a little bit to the enforceability of intellectual property rights, because when we look at NFTs as a means to help artists in developing countries, they first of all can't afford to consult a lawyer to write a 20-page license contract. Secondly, there are platforms like OpenSea that might have certain standards which you have to adhere to. And thirdly, even if an artist from a developing country realizes that someone who bought his or her NFT is using it in an inappropriate way, how can you enforce that? Ifeanyi, have you come across cases where an NFT artist realizes that things are not happening in line with the intended contractual use?
Yes, we've seen some of these cases. In fact, of the scenarios was what inspired one of those that were affected to actually create our own NFT platform. So currently there is this lady called Deborah Ojegbede. She's the founder and CEO of Afen Blockchain. It's an NFT platform, and she recently emerged as the Afen blockchain, of course, emerged as the best NFT marketplace at the recently concluded Binance Decentralized Africa. She was able to raise about over $1 million, like in 10 minutes. And
how much? Sorry, I did not get that acoustically. Over 100 million or 1 million?
No, 1 million. $1 million. And that translates to a lot of millions in Naira, depending on the exchange rate. So, and what she has done was initially, of course, there were a lot of nuances around this, especially for young artists. For instance, you're looking at the issue of how do you conduct a proper IP due diligence on the platform you want to use? How do you have IP diligence on the IP owner? And then you're looking also at conducting certain diligence with regards to the T's and C's of that particular NFT platform. And then you're also looking, by the way, T's and C's means terms and conditions. They said we shouldn't use abbreviations. All right. And then she also was looking at issues around the ability of artists to come to the market space without having to go through intermediaries. But the issues behind all this is that I think artists now are becoming wiser. They are beginning to use the NFT platform in a way that is cost effective for them and can bring in a lot of money. Recently, I was reading, I'm not sure where I read that now. There's an American artist who told people that go ahead and create stuff using AI with my voice, and then go ahead and share. And then she was going to share the royalties with them. So it's a disruptive period we are in, and it is always advisable you do your due diligence on the market platform. No, just like Joanne said, you need to be intentional as to what you want to achieve, and then find the best business model that will enable ease of doing business on the platform. And I think that's where the secret lies.
Hector, you have been looking into this, as I believe, and Vianney mentioned there are different platforms. Do they all have kind of similar terms of conditions? Is there an industry standard already? And do I have to obey the rules that the platform has established if I wanted to use it to sell my NFTs? Or can I have an individual agreement even though the platform has a certain standard?
Yeah, so maybe most of you are aware of EIP 721, Ethereum Improvement Proposal, ERC 721, but it's mainly for the NFTs. But before ERC 721 came into existence, there were still NFTs. For example, CryptoPunks, CryptoKitties, yeah. So CryptoKitties do not follow 721 standard, and that's why it's not interoperable, and they had to manually code it to make it visible on OpenSea. But since now we have this standard, which most NFT platforms are following, it's interoperable, and you see the same trades, and it is visible on all the platforms simultaneously. Yeah, so this is the ERC 721 standard that you follow for minting an NFT. But depending on which platforms do you use, it's up to them what terms and conditions they want to enforce. For example, recently there was a battle between OpenSea and Blur, where Blur said that we would, make most of the NFTs royalty free to attract buyers, because if you're trading in NFTs, you don't want to share the royalty with the artist. Fernanda said that she made 10% from the further secondary sales of her NFTs by this person who bought 13 or 16 NFTs from her collection. But a lot of traders don't want to do that. So NFT platforms, to attract those traders to their platform, might change the terms and can have different rules to compete with established platforms such as OpenSea. And that's why we do need a standard that can be implemented in the smart contract itself. So for example, if you have the royalties in the smart contract, such as there is this ERC 721 standard, which everyone is following, then platforms do not have so much control over what can go in the metadata or not, if it's the standard. But if it's not in the contract, then of course platforms can decide what policies do they want, or what royalty do they want to share with the artist, and so on. But also, Moritz, you were earlier talking about the best practices or global standards. And as far as I know, there is no set global standard, but there are definitely best practices that community has come up with. And when I talk to Web3 startups, or especially the creators, I tell them, hey, make sure that your metadata has good description of what the underlying content is. It clearly describes the underlying asset, and your metadata is frozen, and your asset is also stored on a decentralized platform using, for example, IPFS or RWave. Getting a bit technical, I know, but just to point out that there are two types of NFTs. One that is completely on-chain, on the blockchain, even the underlying asset is on the blockchain. But with the most of the NFTs, it's not the case, because firstly, it's too expensive to have the entire NFT, so the token and the underlying asset on the blockchain. And that's why what most of the collections are doing is that they mint the token, and in the metadata, they have a link to the asset, to the underlying asset, which points to a website where you can see the asset, which is generally a centralized server. And the risk with that is that what if the person who owns the website forgets to pay for the domain name, or the server goes down? Then what are you buying? If you open your NFT and the website is suddenly not there, you have an empty token and you're not owning anything, basically. And to avoid that risk, it's better to upload the underlying content on a decentralized server. There are some solutions such as IPFS, RWave, and and as well the terms and conditions, right? So Oliver mentioned, all of you actually mentioned that if you are not transferring the use right, the buyer are not getting anything other than just the right to have the token, the asset in the wallet, or have it as a piece of art. But if you want to transfer the use rights or give additional rights, you should have the terms and conditions. And then the question is, where should this terms and condition be written? On the website, or like as part of the metadata? And this is also another very important question, but I advise the people I talk with, artists I talk with, to have at least the link in the metadata, so that the buyers can go and check what use rights are they getting. Do they have any rights to the asset or not? Yeah.
Hector mentioned that there is no standard yet, and putting a long statement which exactly you have included or not might not be very easy to do. Many other industries have over time developed their kind of internal standards. The transportation business has the Incoterms, and you just put FOB on something and everybody knows this means free on board, for example. And in the absence of a global regulation for IP NFT standards, which I would not expect to come up within the next 5-10 years, is the industry at a state where it would be feasible, and I mean you are supporting the international exchange through your Web3 Next project, to say, okay, we establish certain terms, Incoterms, which then can be applied multilaterally?
Yes, absolutely. And there have been initiatives to do exactly that already. So what we all know and what Joanne also mentioned before, for example, Creative Commons is something many people have heard of for software, for example, or also for other open source projects. When you have digital, like pictures, for example, or movies or something, that are simply, you do not put the entire license term there, but you simply say, this asset is under Creative Commons license number something. And then everyone who wants to see the details goes to the website of Creative Commons, which is let's put it in describe it in an easy way, in an organization which establishes standards for license terms. And to get the exact same situation, some industry players, and especially one that is very active in the industry, published a set of standard licenses for NFT projects last year. That is Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the biggest investment firms in that space, who has a lot of activities also in Web3. And they indeed gave the task to some of their, especially US lawyers, to draft some standard terms for different scenarios where you want to give no rights, all rights, limited rights to use the intellectual property. And these standard terms, again, are under an open source license, so they can be used and improved and changed by everyone. I quite personally have not seen a very broad use of these standards, but that may be simply the reason why. Let's say the reason for that may be that they are very US-centric. Some of the terms do not really work outside the US. Jurisdiction and also the courts in the US is something people would simply not accept if they are outside of the US. But there are a couple of things that at least are super useful for the entire industry to take into consideration when they draft their own terms. But I have seen that at least my clients, for example, when they come from Germany and have their project situated in Germany, they would not want to use standard licenses that are very much focused on the US way of doing agreements, in the US way of describing the rights and the licenses. So we would still get to do the job ourselves and draft these licenses, but it is helpful to have some standard templates. And maybe there will be more and more projects that simply say, instead of read our license terms, this is under the so-called Don't Be Evil or Can't Be Evil license by Andreessen Horowitz. That's the name of the standard license. So indeed, it's good to have them. They may be, let's say, spread and used in a broader sense, but they have not yet reached, at least to my knowledge, a acceptance in the industry that they are the standard everyone would use.
Vianney, do you have a view on standards you would recommend, or would you, as well as Oliver, try to formulate and to get an individual wording?
Yeah, so also here, what we have seen here in practice is we try to write the standards for most of these platforms. Because there is no global standard as of yet. And like Oliver did mention, that part of the US standard is too peculiar to US. But above that, there is a bit much more, there's more to it than meets the eye. There's also some political and economical interest for every country, right? And we see that at play too in Africa. For instance, recently, the association, the Blockchain Association in Nigeria, recently we gathered and then created certain standards, right? And it was this standard we had together jointly from experts from everywhere. And then it was sent to the Ministry of Finance, as well as the Central Bank, as well as the Security and Exchange Commission, so that they could actually take this standard as a guide and then create some sort of regulation and accept blockchain and all that comes with it, including the NFTs. But what we have seen is the CBN, that's the Central Bank of Nigeria, doesn't want to accept these things, because to accept them would force them to accept cryptocurrencies, right? And that is something they do not want to do, because it has some economical underpinnings to it. And they want this thing to remain with the traditional banks. And then the fintechs industry is saying, oh, see, this thing would be easy if we accept it, because then we can then create viable and fast solution in the fintech space. And they said no, although the Security and Exchange Commission had gone further to accept those standards and then created a guideline that would then that for any investor, both including foreign investors, local investors, something that everyone can have a play with. But having done that, here's the tricky thing now. The tricky thing is this: why the SEC has accepted the blockchain and of course NFTs and all, the CBN is insisting and saying we have the right to regulate currency. So we are saying no, and the SEC is saying, oh, we can allow this as an asset or as an investment. So that's where the trick lies. But what
thank you.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I have many more questions. Particularly, I would love to go into the area of enforcement, which I feel is particularly difficult if an artist in a developing country wants to get something with IP in the US, which is at least thought to be the most expensive environment to get legal support. But we are running out of time. If there's something in the auditorium who has a burning question, please use the chat function or raise your hand. If there's something, please very briefly you want to add or to ask to our experts. Nonetheless, with that, Johan, I would like to ask you, because we had this issue about gender discrimination. Is this area, NFT, IP, something where you see gender-related issues that need to be addressed by the community? You're on mute.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. My experience has been that there is a value in overtly saying to those who don't see themselves in this space, you belong here, you have talent here. And so I've had communication sometimes, frankly, with men who have said that what they like about Web3 and the digital asset space is that anyone can show up and bring their talents. And it's just a matter of learning how you can add value. Whereas I've had conversations with women who have said to me, thank you for explaining this in a way that made it feel accessible for me. And thank you for your example, because I see you, Joe, you feel approachable. And if you're in this space, I feel like whether I'm in marketing or law or finance or whatever my talents are, I can contribute in this space as well. Because this industry is emerging, and because no one is so far advanced that others who want to become invested can't catch up, we have something like an equal playing field. And so I think that what the takeaway I would offer to the audience is, if you are a woman, a person of color, someone from a marginalized community, there is a space for your talent here in digital assets and Web3. And I am inviting you and asking you, because as all of this is being developed, we need your talents, we need your voices so that the technology can serve everyone.
With that, we are getting even closer to our deadline. I would ask each of you, and that's tricky if you ask a lawyer to have one sentence only, because it can last for minutes, to give one single sentence what you would kind of wish to the community to make this business model, making NFTs and helping developing countries through NFTs to get much more into monetarization of art. What would be either your wish or your recommendation to the community? And I start with you, Oliver, because you are in the upper left corner.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for this round. We really enjoyed it. We hope that the audience had a chance to get a good view and overview. And I think everyone in this call is approachable. So please do reach out on LinkedIn or wherever people are connected, and I'm sure you will get responses. Thank you for everyone. And my answer to your question is, even attorneys can mint NFTs as consultancy vouchers and invite people to virtual meetings. We just did that. So if I can do that, and I did the minting myself, you can do it. If Fernanda can monetize her art, you can do it. Just start today, digging into it. It is worth it. And it may be the future, maybe not. We'll find out together.
Ekta, you are next. What's your wish or recommendation to the community? And you're on mute still.
Why can't I speak? Oh, yeah, yes. So I would say.
Now you're muted.
You're still on mute.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to say that only thing that is. Do you hear me? Yes. Okay. So only thing that is standing between you and Web3 is, education, learning. So go and learn, educate yourself like how Fernanda did, and take benefit, monetize, learn, be part of the community, and that's it. There is equal opportunity. Learn, explore, and take part in it.
Perfect. Fernanda, you're next. What's your...
Well, I agree with Oliver and Ekta, because if we can do it, you can do it too. And in my case, I had no community. I had no LinkedIn community at that time, and I did it, and I sold out a collection, and I can live from my artwork. So yeah, everything is possible. You just put all your passion into it, educate yourself, and of course, you can do it too.
Perfect. Joanne.
My takeaway would be that in my over 20 years in global intellectual property law, I've rarely seen something that looks like an equal playing field. I did not go back to school to learn what I know in Web3. I don't think that others who are watching need to either. There are great free resources in podcasts, on YouTube, many articles. You can go to the Homes at Law webpage. I actually put all of my favorite resources there to help people. So again, this is a personal invitation to learn the space, bring your talents here, and as Oliver said, please connect with us on LinkedIn.
Ifeanyi, how about you?
Yeah, my comment would be to women. I would say, ask the questions, enter the space, create the IP, and if you need any support, just reach out. We're here for you.
Perfect. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Heike,
Yes.
thank you for the initiative to make this possible, even though it was short notice. I think it was clear for everybody that the panel enjoyed pretty much this global reach, which for me as well, I have to admit, was a first time discussion. And I think the smart part of what blockchain and Web3 is permitting is that we don't need intermediaries to communicate and interact on a global base, peer-to-peer, and to talk about these opportunities as well on a global base really helps to understand the opportunities this technology is going to bring along for the world. And with that, I think, Heike, you wanted to give us a closing remark as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, really. I learned as well a lot. So really my appreciation to all of you. And yeah, and I would really say it's not the end, my friend. We are really inviting you to more webinars. This one was really on the occasion of the IP World Day. It was a bit a tough topic, but thanks very much, Moritz, that you listened to me and really translated it to the basic structure. So I think it was a good combination. And I really would like to invite everybody who is interested to join us on those webinar series. I posted it in the chat. We are starting on the May 10th with a general introduction again on Web3 and blockchains. But this time in the series, we really would like to focus on our 6 partner countries. So we will hear voices from Kenya, from Senegal, from South Africa, from Jordan, from Lebanon, and perhaps also from Iraq. So all 6 partner countries we're working in. And we will have a community talk, a policy talk. And that's a cooperation with the World Bank, the youth program we introduced at the beginning. So stay with us. How do you always say? Stay tuned and be with us, be in touch. And I posted my email so we can put you into the email and resend email invitation for the next event. Thank you so much for all of you. And I think you're very active in LinkedIn. So somebody asked for the LinkedIn connections. We had that in the invitation, but of course, feel free also, all our speakers, to put your LinkedIn into the chat. But I think it's on the social media connected where we made the announcement of this webinar. So thanks a lot. It was very great, and see each other again, hopefully.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you for
parts of the
hosting and
world.
initiating this, and wishing you all a wonderful day, afternoon, night, or whatever your time zone is. All the best. Thank you very much.
And special thanks to you, Moritz. It was a wonderful moderation. Thanks a lot.